Don't be offended, it's holy. And it acts like a free pass. It gives you permission to break down barriers, to go up to friends and even rivals, and mend broken relationships. It's a community-wide agreement to just forgive and forget, which is so vital for lowering the mental burden of holding grudges. This simple phrase literally rebuilds the social fabric every single year. Now, to see these principles taken to a radical extreme, we have to look at a very unique and intense version of the festival. Let's head to the town of Varsana for what's known as Lakhkar Holi. And as you can see, this is very different from the Holi most of us know. While the general festival is about spontaneous universal play, Lakhkar Holi is a highly structured, very different from the Holi most of us know. While the general festival is about spontaneous universal play, Lakhkar Holi is a highly structured, from the Holi most of us know. While the general festival is about spontaneous universal play, Lakhkar Holi is a highly structured. Away our individual identities, our egos, and our social masks, and replacing it all with a uniform code of color. The festival forces us to remember a simple, beautiful truth, that underneath it all, we share a common, vibrant humanity. And that leaves us with a final question to think about. In our own lives, far away from the colored powders of India, what rituals do we have? What are the things that help us shed our own masks and truly reconnect with each other? What is our holy? All right, you know the one. That classic question. The one that's supposed to tell you everything you need to know about your personality, all based on a simple glass of water. It's the ultimate pop psychology test, isn't it? Are you a glass half full kind of person or a glass half empty one? We're taught that your answer slots you neatly into one of two boxes. So, which is it for you? And the logic seems pretty straightforward, right? The optimist sees what they have, the resource that's available. The pessimist, well, they focus on the void, on what's missing, what could run out. But what if that's the completely wrong way to think about this? What if this whole time we've been asking the wrong question? What if the glass isn't a test at all? What if, instead, it's holding up a mirror to us? That's the idea we're going to dig into. That the glass tells us way more about our own internal world than it does about the water. So that brings us to our first big idea here, the psychology of projection. Because this isn't just some clever wordplay. This actually gets right to the heart of how our minds are wired. See, here's the thing. When you look at that glass, you're not just passively seeing water. Your brain is actually on a mission. It's actively hunting for evidence to back up whatever story it's already telling itself. We call this confirmation bias. So if you're already feeling anxious or kind of drained, your brain is pre-programmed to lock onto that empty space. And this really gets at our deep survival instincts kicking in. I mean, that ancient lizard brain part of us is hardwired to watch out for scarcity. It's constantly scanning for threats, for what might go wrong. So it screams, hey, we might run out. And all of a sudden, that empty part of the glass feels like a real and immediate danger. And here's the kicker: the glass doesn't care. It's neutral. It's just a container with some liquid in it, basically a blank screen. We're the ones projecting the movie of our own feelings, our hopes, our anxieties, our fears right onto it. So this idea, it gets bigger. It doesn't just stop with a glass of water. We do this with everything: our jobs, our relationships, the whole world, really. Which brings us to our next point: your world, your mirror. So think about it this way. When you say the glass is half empty, are you really just describing the water level? Or are you maybe, just maybe, describing your own internal state? You're saying, I don't feel like I have the capacity to handle this right now. Your description is actually a self-assessment. And this can create a really powerful, self-feeding cycle. Let's call it the despair loop. It starts when you feel kind of powerless or empty inside. From that place, you look out at the world and what do you know? You see problems and scarcity everywhere. And seeing that just confirms and deepens that original feeling of emptiness. It's a tough one to break out of. But, and this is so important, the exact opposite is also true. The hope loop works the same way. If you start from a place of feeling capable and resourceful, you'll look at that exact same glass, that exact same world, and see potential and opportunity. And that view, in turn, reinforces your sense of your own capability. Your world mirrors your state of mind. So, are we just stuck choosing between these two loops, between hope and despair? Well, not necessarily. Let's explore a third path, one that kind of breaks us out of this binary choice. We can call this path utilitarian realism. And it's not about wishful thinking, and it's not about dwelling on what's missing. It's about looking at a situation for what it actually is and asking, okay, what can I do with this? It's all about action. Adopting this perspective means we have to completely change the questions we're asking. We have to stop asking the passive question, is it full or empty, and start asking active, practical ones. A utilitarian realist looks at that glass and asks completely different things. Questions like, okay, first off, is this water even drinkable? Or, is anyone else here thirsty? And most importantly, how can we get more? Where's the tap? These questions immediately shift the focus from just observing to actually doing something. I mean, think about the difference. Despair tells you there's nothing you can do, so you just freeze. Blind hope sits around assuming someone else will eventually come and refill the glass. But agency picks up the glass and starts looking for the glass is everywhere we look, and it's more powerful than ever. Seriously, think about it. For most of us here in 2026, the glass isn't on a table. It's in your hand. It's the endless scroll on your phone, your news feed, your social media. It's a constant stream of information that we are constantly interpreting as either half full or half empty. So the next time you find yourself doom scrolling, feeling like the world is running on empty, just pause for a second. Ask yourself this: am I seeing an objective reality right now? Or am I just seeing a projection of my own burnout, my own exhaustion? This is such a powerful way to reframe things. The world's biggest dilemmas, they can feel totally overwhelming, like a glass so empty we can't possibly fill it. But what if we saw them as puzzles? Complicated for sure, but ultimately solved of despair. So in the end, the whole debate over half full or half empty, it's a distraction. The water is there. That's a fact. It's a resource. So the only question that truly matters, the one that moves us from just looking to actually doing, is what will you do with it? Right now, as we speak, one of the world's most vibrant and exciting celebrations is even started. Well, we're going to dig into the ancient legends, the deep family traditions, and all the powerful symbols that make this festival just so special. But here's the wild part. To really get what this celebration is all about, you have to start with, well, with fear. Believe it or not, the origin of all the fireworks, the bright colors, and all that happy noise, it comes from a pretty terrifying legend. Yeah, it all started with a monster. And this monster, it has a name. So let's dive right into the ancient story of the beast called Neon. So the myth goes that Neon was this horrifying creature that would come down from the mountains just once a year on New Year's Eve to basically feast on villagers and all their livestock. I mean, for centuries, people lived in just absolute terror of this one night. But then, everything changed. Villagers discovered that this fearsome beast had some very specific and honestly kind of surprisingly simple weaknesses. It was scared of the color red, it absolutely could not stand bright lights, and it was terrified of loud noises. And that discovery was a total game changer. People started hanging red lanterns everywhere, wearing red clothes, and setting off the loudest firecrackers they could find. They were literally fighting fear with celebration. And you know what? It worked. And that is how the core traditions in a safe new year. Over the centuries, it's really evolved to mean something much deeper, something much more human. Today, it is all about family. And that's really the key thing to understand. No matter how huge the parades get or how bright the fireworks are, the absolute heart of the Spring Festival is the family reunion. It's about everyone, no matter how far, coming home. And when I say coming home, it's on a scale that is just, it's hard to wrap your head around. In a normal year, there are around 3 billion. Yes, that's Chanyeon. It's this massive, coordinated effort of planes and trains and buses all working together to get hundreds of millions of people back to their hometowns, just in time for the celebration. And all of that travel, all that effort, it leads to one single pivotal moment. The reunion dinner on New Year's Eve. This is, you could argue, the most important meal of the entire year, where generations of a family all gather around the table to share food, tell stories, and just be together. And that food, just like so many other customs during this festival, is absolutely packed with meaning. So let's take a look at some of the key symbols that are all about bringing good fortune into the new year. The prep actually starts before the new year arrives. First, homes get a really thorough cleaning, which is all about metaphorically sweeping away any of the bad luck from the past year. Then they're decorated with red paper cuttings and couplets to welcome in all that good fortune. Okay, this is one of my favorite traditions. It involves some really clever wordplay with food. So a whole fish is an absolute must-have at the reunion dinner. Why? Because the Chinese word for fish, yu, sounds exactly like the word for surplus or abundance. So by eating fish, you're doing something symbolic. You're wishing for a surplus of wealth and prosperity in the year to come. It's basically a delicious prayer for abundance. And of course, you can't talk about Chinese New Year without mentioning hongbao, or red envelopes. Elders give these to the younger generation, and it's not just about the money inside. It's a symbolic way to pass on good fortune and protection for the year ahead. And hey, the celebrations don't just stop after one night. Not even close. Chinese New Year is actually a 15-day marathon of festivities. The whole festival has a really clear structure. It kicks off with that big reunion dinner on New Year's Eve, then the official start is on New Year's Day, and it all keeps going for 2 full weeks, wrapping up with the beautiful Lantern Festival on the 15th and final day. And during this time, the streets just come alive with these incredible public celebrations. You've got traditional dragon and lion dances filling the air with so much energy and the sound of drums. And while old school firecrackers are restricted in a lot of cities now, they've been replaced by these massive, professionally choreographed firework displays and dazzling light shows. So, how does all of this apply to this year? Let's take a look at your guide to 2026, the Year of the Horse. All right, go ahead and mark your calendars. The main event, Chinese New Year's Day itself, falls on Tuesday, February 17th. That's the official start of the new year. Now, you might be wondering why the date changes every single year. Well, it's because the holiday is based on the lunisolar calendar, which, you guessed it, follows the cycles of the moon. The date is always set for the second new moon after the winter solstice, which means it'll always land somewhere between late January and mid-February. The cool thing about this is that you can always plan ahead. So here's a quick look at the dates and their zodiac animals for the next few years, so you'll always know when the celebration is just around the corner. When you strip away the myths and the travel and the fireworks, what you're left with is a really simple but incredibly powerful idea. The Spring Festival is, at its heart, about hope. It's a chance to settle old debts, forgive grudges, and just start the new year with a completely clean slate. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought. The tradition of cleaning the house? It's a powerful metaphor, right? So as we all look ahead to a new beginning, it's worth asking yourself, what bad luck from this past year would you choose to sweep away to make room for a truly fresh start?
Okay, so we're about to pull back the curtain on a holiday you think you know, but get ready because we're going to explore the wild, surprising, and yeah, kind of bloody history of Valentine's Day. Let's jump right in.
So, seriously, think about it for a second. When I say Valentine's Day, what pops into your head? You've got that image, right? Well, I'm here to tell you the real story. It's way more complex and honestly a lot more surprising than you think.
Because this isn't just about cards and candy. Nope, it's a story that's got everything. Ancient pagan rituals, martyred saints, medieval poetry, and even a super smart entrepreneur from the 1800s. We're talking about a journey from this really intense ancient festival all the way to a global commercial powerhouse. All right, let's get right to it. The Valentine's Day we know today, it's really just a modern invention. Think of it like a soft focus filter that's been put over a much, much grittier and frankly, weirder past. And just look at this contrast. It's wild, right? On one side, you have everything we associate with the holiday now. Roses, chocolates, you know the drill. But on the other side, that's where it all started. We're talking sacrificial goats, public whippings, things that would be absolutely shocking today. So the big question is, how in the world did we get from that to this? To figure that out, we have to go way, way back. All the way back to ancient Rome, actually. That's where we find the earliest roots of this holiday, and a festival that was, well, chaotic is a good word for it. It was a festival called Lupercalia, and yeah, it happened in mid-February, and it was technically dedicated to the Roman god of agriculture. But let's be real, this wasn't just about farming. It was a really primal, intense ritual all about fertility. Okay, so this is where it gets pretty wild. The rituals involved sacrificing goats and even dogs. After that, a group of priests called the Luperci would take strips of the animal hides, run, get this, naked through the streets, and lightly whip women with them. The belief was that this would make them fertile for the next year. I mean, can you imagine? It was this bloody public spectacle, a far cry from a quiet dinner date, right? So how does a pagan ritual like that become a Christian holiday? Well, it's a classic move, really. As Christianity grew, the church often just absorbed pagan traditions. So, in the 5th century, Pope Gelasius I basically said, okay, February 14th is now St. Valentine's Day, kind of baptizing the old festival. But it took a long time to become romantic. That didn't really happen until the poet Chaucer came along in the Middle Ages. And the whole commercial side of things, that's much more recent, starting around the 1840s. All right, so the holiday is named for St. Valentine. But here's the thing, nobody's totally sure who he was. Seriously, the Catholic Church itself recognizes at least 3 different saints named Valentine who were martyred, and the historical records are just a mess. His true identity is a total mystery. But, you know, when there's a mystery, legends pop up, and the ones about St. Valentine are great. The most popular story makes him out to be this romantic rebel, a priest who secretly married soldiers even though the emperor had forbidden it. Then there's another story where he was a prisoner who sent a love note to the jailer's daughter. It's these kinds of stories that gave the day its romantic, defiant vibe. And that second legend, the one about the prisoner, well, that's supposedly where one of the most famous parts of the holiday comes from. The story goes that right before he was executed, he sent one last note to the jailer's daughter. And the way he signed it? From your Valentine. I mean, that signature has stuck around for centuries. We still see it on cards today. So you have these romantic legends floating around, but it was really medieval poets who sealed the deal. Guys like Geoffrey Chaucer started writing about February 14th as the day when birds pick their mates for the year. And just like that, they linked the date to courtly love and romance. That was the real game changer. It shifted the whole focus from martyrdom to love. Okay, so from medieval poetry, let's jump forward a few hundred years. This is where Valentine's Day becomes big business and starts to look a lot more like the holiday we know today. And the person you can thank, or maybe blame, for all those cards in the aisle, her name was Esther Howland. She was this amazing American entrepreneur. Back in the 1840s, she started mass producing these really fancy, lacy valentines. She basically turned a personal little note into a huge commercial product and kicked off the whole industry. And wow, did it become an industry. Today, the spending is just massive. And it's all about what I call the big three: cards, candy, and flowers. It's a gigantic day for retail, which, of course, is why you hear people call it a Hallmark holiday. But wait, the story isn't over yet. Because now, here in the 21st century, the meaning of Valentine's Day is changing all over again. People are basically taking the holiday and making it their own. We're seeing this really cool wave of new traditions. You've got Galentine's Day for celebrating your friends, which is awesome. There's also this big push for self-love, treating yourself to a solo date or some self-care. And oh yeah, people are spending a ton of money on their pets for Valentine's Day. The point is, it's not just for romantic couples anymore. And this isn't just happening here, it's a global thing. In Japan, for instance, women are the ones who give chocolates to men, and they even give honorary chocolates to their coworkers. And then you have South Korea, which has taken it to a whole other level. The 14th of every single month is some kind of love-themed holiday. How cool is that? So, when you really look at the whole journey of this one day, from a bloody fertility festival to a day for a mysterious saint to medieval poetry and now a multi-billion-dollar industry, it's just incredible. It shows how a holiday's meaning can totally flip over time. And now that we're reshaping it again to be about all kinds of love, it really makes you think, what does Valentine's Day actually mean now? I guess the answer is, it's always been whatever we decide to make it. And that's still true today.
We all know the story of Hir and Ranja, right? It's like the classic tragic romance. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if the heart of this story isn't about love, but something way more radical? In this explainer, we're going to dig into the idea that this isn't just a love story. It's a full-blown rebellion. Yeah, seriously. What if one of the greatest love stories ever told isn't really about love at all? What if it's a story about a fight for your very soul? A battle between who you are and who the world, your family, your culture, demands you to be. And that's exactly the lens we're going to use today. We're looking at this classic tale not just as a romance, but as a powerful psychological drama. It's all about the struggle to find and become your authentic self and, the absolute chaos that erupts when that journey goes against everything you're supposed to do. Okay, so let's dive right in, right at the start. What's so fascinating is that long before Hir and Ranja even lay eyes on each other, they're both already rebels in their own right. They're both quietly pushing back against the lives that have been planned out for them. And that sets the stage for literally everything to come. So it really all kicks off with Ranja. His family has this very clear picture of who he should be, the provider. The guy who cares about land, money, and his duties. But that's just not him. Ranja is what you might call the aesthetic man. He's all about his music, his flute, this search for a higher purpose. So when he finally leaves home, it's a huge deal. He's not just ditching his brothers, he's rejecting their entire worldview. It's a massive psychological break from the collective. And then he meets Hir. And bam, the connection is instantaneous. But it's so much deeper than just, oh, she's beautiful. It's a psychological thing. It's like they're looking in a mirror. They each see another soul who's also suffocating, trying to break free from the box society has put them in. This actually ties into a really cool concept from psychology called the anima and animus. Now, stick with me here. The basic idea is that deep down, in our unconscious mind, we all have this sort of internal blueprint of our true self or our soulmate. So when Hir and Ranja meet, it's not just love. They're literally seeing their own soul, their most authentic hidden self, right there in front of them in another person. It's like cosmic recognition. And for a Hir who's totally trapped by all these rigid rules and expectations, Ranja's flute, it's way more than just a nice tune. It's described as a call to the self. Just think about that. It's the sound of freedom, of a life she didn't even know was possible. It's a direct line to her own authentic self, completely bypassing all the noise from her family. Well, as you can probably guess, this kind of awakening is bound to cause trouble. A big conflict is brewing. And the real fight here isn't just, two lovers against some angry parents. No, this is a deep psychological war. It's the individual versus what's called the collective's shadow, that dark, repressive part of a community that absolutely hates anything or anyone that dares to be different. The biggest villain in the story isn't even a person. It's an idea, kherat. It's this all-consuming obsession with family honor, with reputation. And to her family, here isn't really a person with a soul and dreams. She's property, a symbol of their status. So her wanting to choose her own life, that's not just an inconvenience. It's a direct threat to their very identity. And this toxic idea of khairats gets a human face. Here's uncle, Qaidu. He is the living, breathing embodiment of that shadow. This guy is just bitter, filled with resentment, and he projects all of his own misery and failures onto Hir and Ranja. He basically becomes the weapon that society uses to try and break them. So they forcibly marry Hero off to someone else. And she doesn't just get sad, she has a complete psychological shutdown. But, and this is incredible, she completely refuses to consummate the marriage. It's a massive act of defiance. Think about it. Her body might be trapped in this contract, but she keeps her inner self, her psyche, totally free. It remains unconquered. Meanwhile, Ranja is on his own epic journey. He becomes a jogi, an ascetic. But this isn't just him putting on a new outfit. This is a deep psychological transformation. He goes through what's called an ego side of Kanha. It's time to meet the legendary butter thief. So the key to this whole story is Kanha's one great weakness, Makkhan, fresh homemade butter. He absolutely loved the stuff. Now his mother Yashoda, she knew this of course, so she'd hang the pot of butter way up high, thinking, there's no way he can reach that. But for a kid like Kanha, that wasn't a problem. It was a challenge. And oh, did he get creative. He didn't just give up. He cooked up a whole plan. First, he calls over his brother Da and his buddy Mansuk. He lays out his sneaky little scheme. Mansuk bends down to make a human ladder. Kanha scrambles right up onto his shoulders, and then, slowly, carefully, he reaches out his hand. And he got it. The second his fingers touched that butter pot, his face just lit up with this pure, unfiltered joy. You see, it wasn't just about the butter. It was about the clever plan, the teamwork, and the absolute thrill of pulling it off. But you know how it goes. His timing wasn't quite perfect. Right as he's enjoying his loot, his mother Yashoda walks in. And her reaction? It tells you everything you need to know about them. She sees the butter all over his face and pretends to be angry, but then she looks into his innocent eyes, and that's it. She just melts and pulls him into a hug. Okay, so from a playful butter thief, we're now about to meet a fearless hero. The vibe of our story is about to shift, like a lot. We're going from lighthearted fun to a genuine life or death battle. So, one afternoon, Kana is playing by the Amuna River with his brother Do, and Do gives him this super serious warning. He points to this dark, swirling part of the river and tells him about the deadly, poisonous serpent, the Kalia Nag, that lives deep inside. Basically, stay away, it's dangerous. So, what does Kana do? Does he listen? Nope. Without even a second of hesitation, he just leaps right into the poisonous river. He wasn't pushed, he wasn't dared, he just jumped, completely fearless. He just disappears under the waves. The courage is just, wow. Down in the dark water, the massive Kalia Nag attacks, trying to crush this little boy in its powerful coils. But Kanha isn't just fighting back. In this unbelievable move, he completely dodges the serpent and actually climbs right up on top of its giant, terrifying heads. And this is where the story becomes something else entirely. Standing on top of this monster serpent, Kanha just pulls out his flute and starts playing beautiful music, dancing on the creature's heads. This isn't a fight anymore, it's a performance. It's a show of total control. And the serpent, completely defeated, just gives up and begs for forgiveness. So we've seen the mischievous child, we've seen the fearless hero, but this last story, it shows us Kana as something even bigger. The divine protector of his entire village. The situation was dire. A terrible, non-stop rain starts pouring down so hard that it's about to flood the entire village of Gokul. Everyone is panicking. But Kana, he just calmly tells his friend Munsuk not to worry, that they'll all find shelter at Golvarden Hill. And then he does something impossible. He walks up to the massive mountain and lifts it into the air with just his little finger. Can you just picture that for a second? He's holding an entire mountain up, making this giant protective umbrella for everyone. The whole village, Yashoda, Munsuk, all of them, they run underneath to safety, and they're just staring up in total, complete shock at this incredible feat of strength. And this was the moment for his mom. Seeing her son, her little butter thief, holding up a mountain to save all of their lives, her eyes just filled with tears of pride. Right then and there, she understood. Her boy was more than just her child. He was their savior. So when you put all three of these stories together, the butter thief, the serpent tamer, and the mountain lifter, you start to get this really complex and amazing picture of who Kanha really was. And this really gets to the heart of it all. Kanha was like two people at once. On one hand, he was the nut-cut Balak, the naughty, playful kid who loved butter and schemed with his friends. But on the other hand, he was the Divya Rakshak, the divine protector, who had limitless power, who could defeat monsters and literally lift mountains. And so these beautiful stories from Gokul leave us with this really deep question, right? How can both of those things be true in one little boy? He was a child who needed his mother's love, but also a divine protector who could save the world. Who truly was Kanha? Well, that's the beautiful mystery that people are still fascinated by today. Today, we're going to look at a pivotal moment in history, but through a totally unique lens. We're stepping beyond the politics to explore the psychology of Mahatma Gandhi and his assassin, Nathuram Godse. This is really a story of two profoundly different minds on an inevitable collision course. So, let's start with the big question that frames this whole thing. Is an assassination just a political move? Or is it something deeper, a profound psychological event? The source material we're digging into today makes a compelling case that it's the explosive result of a deep psychological conflict. All right, first up, let's build a psychological profile of Gandhi. The analysis we're looking at frames his entire philosophy around this idea of moral perfectionism and an incredible, almost superhuman drive for self-control. So when you break down his mindset, you see these key traits. You've got moral perfectionism and self-transcendence, which really point to a personality dominated by what psychoanalysts call the superego. You know, that little voice in your head, your internal moral compass. And all of this was backed by just supreme mental strength that guided his every move. So how in the world did he achieve that level of self-control? Well, the source points to a key psychological tool, sublimation. It's a bit of a fancy word, but the idea is pretty simple. It's about taking those primal urges we all have, like aggression, and consciously redirecting them into something constructive. In a way, Gandhi was challenging Freud's whole theory that aggression is just this unavoidable thing we have to live with. And this is exactly how he did it. His practice of ahimsa, or nonviolence, wasn't a sign of weakness at all. The source describes it as a highly developed cognitive function. Think of it like this. It's the logical, rational part of the prefrontal cortex, gaining complete mastery over the brain's fear and anger center, the amygdala. This was profound strength, not passivity. Okay, so that's one side of the coin. Now let's flip it over and look at the opposing mindset. We're going to explore the psychology of Nathuram Godse, which the source presents as being deeply rooted in ideological rigidity and a serious identity crisis. A core concept to understand here is something called cognitive rigidity. This is a mental state where a person just can't adapt to new information. Everything becomes black and white. There's no room for nuance. And when your personal identity gets wrapped up in a rigid ideology like that, any opposing view isn't just a disagreement, it feels like an existential threat. This slide really lays out the psychological drivers that the source identifies. It all starts with an identity crisis, which then feeds into this powerful victimhood complex. That, in turn, is fueled by a burning sense of perceived injustice and leads to the need for a really strong justification mechanism to make his future actions seem logical, even necessary. And that justification mechanism, well, it took a very specific and pretty dangerous form, what psychologists call a messiah complex. This is when a person truly believes they are destined to save a group or a nation, and that this greater purpose justifies any action, no matter how extreme. The analysis of Godse's court statements points directly to this mindset. And this quote, which is pulled right from the source's analysis, just puts it so plainly. He didn't see the assassination as some kind of necessary evil. No, he believed it was his duty, something he had to do for a so-called greater cause. That's the Messiah complex in a nutshell. So we've got two completely opposing mindsets. One is focused on internal self-control, and the other is fixated on what it sees as an external threat. Let's see how these two worlds clashed. To really get this clash, we need one more key concept, locus of control. It's all about where you believe power comes from. Do you believe you control your own life? That's an internal locus. Or do you feel like you're at the mercy of outside forces, an external locus? And wow, this slide just lays the difference out so starkly, doesn't it? Gandhi operated from a deeply internal locus of control. His whole philosophy was, if I change myself, if I endure suffering, the world around me will eventually have to change. Godse, on the other hand, had a totally external locus. He saw the problem as being entirely outside of himself, believing the problem is external, it's Gandhi. If I just eliminate that one element, peace and order will be restored. All right, let's get even more direct and put these two mindsets head to head, point by point, based on the source's analysis. Check this out. It couldn't be clearer. Gandhi's approach was inclusive. Godse's was exclusive. Gandhi's source of power came from self-suffering. Godse's came from external violence. When faced with conflict, Gandhi sought dialogue and a change of heart. Godse sought suppression and ultimately elimination. And their ultimate goals? For Gandhi, it was a search for a higher moral truth. For Godse, it was the defense of ideological dominance. They were, in every psychological sense, fundamentally irreconcilable. So, where did this clash finally lead? To a tragic final act, of course. But here's the twist. As the source argues, the result was a profound psychological defeat for the assassin. Now, the psychoanalytic interpretation here is pretty fascinating. The source suggests that on some level, Gandhi saw Gandhi as a failed father figure. And in this view, the assassination becomes a kind of political version of an Oedipus complex, like a rebellious son striking out at the father figure he blames for all his community's problems. And this brings us to a final, powerful comparison of their paths. Gandhi's path is described as evolutionary, a conscious attempt to lift humanity above its primitive, violent instincts. In stark contrast, Godse's path was primitive. It was a regression, falling back on the most basic instinct that elimination is the only solution to a complex problem. And all of it, builds up to the single greatest psychological irony of the entire event. And here it is, the ultimate paradox. By destroying the body, the act immortalized the idea. This was Godse's greatest psychological defeat. Think about that for a second. The one act designed to extinguish Gandhi's influence is the very thing that made it eternal. He won the physical battle for a split second, but he lost the psychological war for all time. And that leaves us with one last powerful question from this analysis to chew on. Godse destroyed the body, but in doing so, did he accidentally make the idea immortal? It's a question that really reveals the strange, unpredictable power that an idea can have, even in the face of violence.
You know, every year, millions of us tune in to watch these huge national parades.
And the parade is
They're these amazing spectacles of military might and cultural pride. But what if I told you the real show isn't happening on the street? It's actually happening inside your head. So today, we're going to deconstruct the hidden psychological architecture of a national parade. I mean, it's easy to look at it and just see a few tanks, some colorful floats. It's this incredibly well-crafted exercise in collective psychology, and it's designed to reinforce the very idea of what a nation is. And that right there is the big idea for today. The military hardware, the cultural displays, they're just the tools. The real goal is to tap into these really fundamental psychological mechanisms that build unity, security, and a shared identity on a massive, massive scale. So how on earth does it work? Well, it all starts with a feeling. The first, and maybe the most powerful layer here, is creating a shared emotion that's so strong it literally makes millions of very different people feel like they're a single entity. Sociologists have this fantastic term for it: collective effervescence. Just think of it as this invisible social glue that binds a crowd together at a concert, or in a stadium during a huge game. A national parade just takes this and elevates it to a whole other level. It's this shared energy that somehow makes all our individual differences feel a little less important for a moment. So how do they create this feeling? Well, it really boils down to two key things. First, there's synchrony. When millions of people are watching the same thing or singing the anthem at the exact same moment, it just collapses the psychological distance between them. Suddenly, things like class or language, they just seem to matter a little less. And then you've got emotional contagion. You know that surge of pride you feel? Well, it spreads like a wave through the crowd, and it validates everyone's sense of belonging to something much bigger, something more permanent than just themselves, the nation. Okay, so you've got this incredible feeling of oneness. Now what? Well, that feeling is then shaped into a story. A parade isn't just a random procession. It's a really carefully curated psychological story, and it's told through these powerful visual symbols. And it's a brilliant balancing act when you think about it. On one side, you have what we can call the micro-identities, those really colorful tableau floats that represent individual states and cultures. Psychologically, this is telling every citizen, hey, your unique heritage is seen, it's valued. But at the same time, they're all part of the same parade. which integrates them into the macro identity, the one single nation. It's like a musical instruments, whatever they are, and you place them at an altar. And then, for one whole day, you don't use them at all. And this simple act of stepping back is just packed with psychological meaning. And this slide just illustrates the two sides of that act perfectly. First, it's an exercise in what you could call ego reduction. By putting down your tools, you're acknowledging that knowledge is a gift to be respected, not some commodity to be conquered. But second, and this is so powerful, it triggers what psychologists call cognitive incubation. By triggers what psychologists call cognitive incubation.
and you know, friends, जब हम अपने नॉलेज को ट्रीट करते हैं ना, तो जो ये ईगो है ये ऑटोमेटिकली रिड्यूस हो जाता है। तो जो ये ईगो है ये ऑटोमेटिकली रिड्यूस हो जाता है, क्योंकि ईगो कोई ऐसी चीज नहीं है जिसे लंबे समय तक बना के रखा जाए।
Stopping the conscious effort, you're giving your subconscious mind the space it needs to work on problems. It's basically the ancient version of a modern productivity hack, knowing that your best ideas often pop up when you're in the shower or on a walk, not when you're staring at a screen. It's the process that leads to those famous aha moments of insight. The tools of this festival aren't just physical, they're also symbolic. And that brings us to our next section, a blueprint for your brain. We're going to decode the symbolism of the goddess Saraswati herself, which really acts as a visual guide for a well-balanced mind. So each element of the imagery here is a visual metaphor for an ideal mental state. The white lotus she sits on, that represents purity, a clear, untroubled mind. The veena, which is a stringed instrument, symbolizes harmony, the beautiful integration of the arts and the sciences. And the swan, which is known as a humse, represents discernment, that critical ability to find the truth.
Let's just zero in on that swan for a second. It represents a mental skill called viveka, or discrimination. The myth goes that this swan can magically separate pure milk from a mixture of milk and water. I mean, in our modern world, what is this if not critical thinking? It's the skill of telling truth from falsehood, the essential from the trivial. It's about finding the signal in all the noise.
So when you bring all of these pieces together, the history, the color psychology, the strategic break, the symbolic blueprint, the festival really reveals itself as a powerful mental recalibration. It's an annual ritual that reinforces clarity, discipline, and a peaceful, not a frantic pursuit of knowledge.
You know, this entire philosophy is just so perfectly captured by this quote from our source material. The ultimate wealth is not what we possess, but what we know and how creatively we express it. That's really the core value at the heart of this whole celebration.
So to wrap this all up, I'll just leave you with this question. The ancient wisdom that's baked into this festival is, you could argue, more relevant now than ever. In our age of constant, overwhelming information, how do you separate the signal from the noise?
Wouldn't even look at twice can become sacred, something so precious that its value just completely defies all practical logic. It's a classic conflict, really, modern thinking versus this deep inherited sentimentality. All right, so let's start by meeting the main characters of our story. And I'm not talking about the people, I'm talking about the slippers themselves, because to this family, they are nothing short of a historical artifact. The family actually calls them the Aitihasik Chapalain, or historical slippers, because, well, that's exactly what they are. After Babaji's father passed away, these slippers were the one thing he held on to. He used to say his father would wake up any second and ask for them. They became this physical, tangible link to the man he'd lost. Now, what's so fascinating here is that Babuji's attachment didn't just come out of nowhere. He absolutely learned it from his father, the guy who owned the slippers in the first place. The grandfather you see was a man who saw stories in everything. A vase wasn't just a vase, it was a memory of his wedding proposal. An old pickle jar became a planter because his wife made her first pickle in it. You couldn't move a thing. And this powerful idea that our things hold our stories was passed right down to his. So this deep emotional connection, it sets the stage perfectly for the story's main conflict. A huge generational standoff between Babuji and his own family who, just want him to get a new comfortable pair of slippers. And this just lays out the divide so clearly. On one side, you've got the family. They see worn out, broken slippers. They're worried about what guests will think. Their concerns are completely practical. But for Babuji, every single point they make feels like an attack on his father's memory. When they say the slippers are worn out, he hears them dismissing his father's entire legacy. And it gets to the point where he's afraid that once he's gone, his own memories, his things, will be tossed out just as easily. So the tension finally boils over. His wife, in a well-meaning but really misguided attempt to help, she hides the slippers, hoping out of sight, out of mind will do the trick. But the exact opposite happens. Babuji is so deeply hurt, and he accuses his son, Naman, of plotting to get rid of them. It just confirms his absolute worst fears. His family just doesn't get it. The family drama is one thing, but then an accident happens, and it turns this quiet household conflict into a full-blown crisis. It all unfolds in just a few moments. That very same morning, the strap on one of the slippers finally gives out. But Babaji's not deterred. He takes them to the local cobbler to get them fixed. And as he's waiting, the unthinkable happens. A stray dog darts in, snatches one slipper right off the ground, and just vanishes. And like that, half of his most precious possession is just gone. Just picture his return. It's heartbreaking. Babuji walks home with one foot completely bare, his face just a mask of distress. He doesn't say a single word. He just washes his feet, goes to his room, and refuses to eat or talk to anyone. That silence is so much heavier than any argument they've ever had. And this is the moment everything changes. Seeing their father so profoundly grief-stricken, all the family's frustration just melts away. It's replaced by one single desperate mission: find that slipper. The narrator just captures the irony of it all perfectly. The very thing they wanted to get rid of has now become the most important thing in the world. Why? Because they finally realize its value isn't in the object itself, it's in their father's well-being. His happiness is completely tied to that old slipper. The search becomes a total obsession. First, the poor cobbler is out there, scouring the alleys. Then, the family spreads the word through the whole neighborhood, describing this one worn shoe like they're searching for a missing person. Finally, in an act of sheer desperation, the narrator ends up at a local temple, sifting through a pile of discarded shoes, just hoping to find a match. And she finds one that looks close enough. She places it by Babuji's bedside, just hoping it will work. But the plan backfires spectacularly. Babuji finds the replacement and feels completely betrayed. He cries out, "Have we fallen on such days that my own children will fool me?" The shock is just too much. He collapses, his breathing gets heavy, his body turns cold. There
On the first day of the Bengali calendar, merchants actually start brand new account books. They're called hal kata, and it symbolizes a totally clean financial slate for the year ahead. How cool is that?
All right, our tour continues as we head south into a region just packed with ancient traditions. Here, the new year is welcomed with some really unique culinary and visual customs.
You know, down south, the New Year traditions are just wonderfully sensory. For Ugadi, it's all about a special dish. For Putandu, you've got these intricate kolam decorations. And for Vishu, it's a sacred viewing. You see? These aren't just dates on a calendar, they're living, breathing experiences. So let's talk about Ugadi. The name itself is pretty profound. It's a mix of the Sanskrit words yuga, which means era, and adi, which means beginning. So it literally translates to the start of a new era. And a huge part of the celebration is this dish called Ugadi Pachadi. It's so interesting because it combines 6 different flavors, from sweet to bitter. And that's meant to symbolize all the different mixed experiences we go through in life.
Now in Kerala, the new year, which is called Vishu, starts with his really beautiful philosophy. It all centers around the Vishukani. So families are led with their eyes closed to see this carefully prepared arrangement of auspicious items. Things like rice, fruits, gold, and flowers. The whole idea is that this very first sight of the new year is going to shape your fortune for the next 12 months. What a beautiful way to start the year.
So, as we start to wrap up our journey across India, what have we really seen? Well, it's not just one new year, is it? It's a whole calendar just bursting at the seams with diversity. I mean, we've touched on more than 14 unique New Year festivals here, and believe me, that's not even all of them. It's just such a powerful testament to the country's incredible cultural richness.
And yeah, the list just keeps on going. You've got Bohag Bihu in Assam, Bestu Varas in Gujarat, Cheti Chand for the Sindhi community, Pana Sankranti in Odisha, Jur Sital in the Midla region of Bihar, Losong in Sikkim. I mean, every single name represents a completely unique tradition, a unique way to start the year.
But you know, when you boil it all down, despite all the different dates, all the different customs and names, there's a single unifying spirit that runs through every single one of them. And that's the universal hope for renewal, for prosperity, for a fresh start. So that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. What does all this incredible diversity of New Year's teach us about time itself? And what about the traditions that keep us connected to nature, to history, and to each other? Maybe, just maybe, it's a simple reminder that there's always more than one way to mark a new beginning.
Today, let's talk about the Hindu calendar, but we're not going to just look at a list of dates. No, think of it more like we're meeting a family of 12 totally unique personalities who guide us through the entire year. We're about to go on a journey through the 12 faces of time.
So, here's the thought for you. What if the months weren't just names on a page? What if they could actually speak? What if they had their own feelings, their own voices, their own stories to tell? What do you think they'd say about the world? That's exactly what we're about to find out. We've broken our year-long story into 4 parts, kind of like acts in a play, and they follow the seasons. We'll start with the joyful beginning of spring, then we'll feel the incredible rhythm of the monsoon, bask in the super bright season of light, and finally, we'll cozy up in winter's warm embrace. Okay, let's dive in. Our story kicks off with the most vibrant, energetic start to the year you can imagine. A time of new life, new beginnings, and yeah, that slowly building summer heat. First up, meet Chaitra, the true herald of new beginnings. As the very first month, it kicks off the Hindu New Year, and it brings all that fresh greenery and the sweet smell of spring with it. It's a really sacred time too, because it's when the 9 forms of the goddess Durga are worshipped during Navaratri. The whole month is just filled with this amazing sense of optimism. Right after that gentle start, we roll into Vaishak, which is all about the farmer's joy. This is the time for Baisakhi, that super vibrant harvest festival celebrating everything the earth has given us. And you can feel the sun starting to flex its muscles. The heat gets a little more intense each day. It's also a time that calls for charity and the purifying ritual of bathing in holy rivers. And then, Jeshta arrives. This is the absolute peak of summer's power. We're talking the hottest, most sweltering month, when those dry, hot winds, the Lu, blow across the land. This month really tests your endurance, with tough fasts like Nirjala Ekadashi, where you don't even have water. But it also teaches us something really important: compassion.
showing us what a virtue it is to give water to thirsty birds and animals. Now, this is a huge turning point. You have this intense, almost unbearable heat from Jayeshta, but it doesn't just last forever. Actually, that scorching heat is what creates the perfect conditions for a massive change. It's literally paving the way for the dramatic, life-giving arrival of the monsoon. And just like that, we're entering the heart of the year. This is a time of incredible transformation, not just for nature, but for our spirits too, all set to the beautiful rhythm of the falling rain. And that first taste of relief, it's called Ashad. You see those dark clouds gathering in the sky, and that long, anxious wait for rain is finally over. As those first drops begin to fall, farmers start sowing their crops, and the whole world smells like wet earth. It's also when we celebrate our teachers and guides during the holy festival of Guru Purnima. Okay, so if Ashad is the opening act, Shravan, or Sawan as many call it, is the monsoon's full, lush, green embrace. This month just throws a blanket of green over absolutely everything. It's a time of deep devotion to Lord Shiva, and you see the famous Kanwar Yatra, where devotees carry holy water for miles. But it's also about simple joys, right? Setting up swings, eating that delicious sweet givar, and of course celebrating the bond between siblings on Raksha Bandhan. The rhythm continues with Bhadrapad, or Bado. The rain is still here, but now it feels like a downpour of devotion. This is the month Lord Krishna arrives on Janmashtami, and we welcome Lord Ganesha into our homes. The weather is just perfect, and honestly, the calendar is just packed with one festival after another. So, the rains have done their job, the clouds are starting to part, and the world enters this incredible season of celebration, clarity, and just light. Ashwin kicks things off with this amazing crystal clear blue sky. The air feels so fresh, and you can just feel this festive excitement building. This is the time for Sharadiya Navratri and the amazing theatrical performances of Ramlila, all building up to the huge celebration of Dussehra, which is all about the ultimate victory of good over evil. And then comes Kartik. Oh, Kartik is the brightest, most dazzling personality of the entire year. You could say its whole purpose is just to kick darkness to the curb and fill every single corner with the light of pure happiness and hope. I mean, you can see why Kartik is so dazzling just by looking at the festivals it holds. It's absolutely stuffed with some of the biggest celebrations of the year. You've got the millions of lamps of Diwali, the rituals of Govardhan Puja and Bhai Dooj, and the sun worship of Chhath Puja. Kartik really, truly is the month of light. You know, after all the fireworks and excitement of Kartik, you kind of need a moment to just breathe. And that's Margashirsha. It's a month of peace and simplicity, so beloved that even Lord Krishna called it his favorite. The mornings have that gentle, rosy chill, the afternoon sunshine feels absolutely perfect, and by the evening, yeah, a light sweater feels pretty good. All right, we're heading into the final stretch now. Our journey takes us into the deep cold of winter, which is a time for quiet reflection before we say goodbye to the year with a spectacular, colorful farewell. And here we have Posh, the true heart of winter. This month brings the most severe cold of the year. The nights are super long, and the mornings are often hidden under this thick blanket of fog. This month isn't really about big, loud festivals. It's about the simple, warming pleasures, like eating jaggery, sesame, and peanuts, and just getting cozy in a warm quilt with a hot drink. But just when you think winter might last forever, Magh arrives, and you can feel things starting to shift. The cold begins its slow retreat. This month is famous for the huge holy fairs at Prayagraj. It's also when we have Makar Sankranti, time for eating khichdi and flying kites high up into that changing sky. And then on the Sant Panchami, we worship Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge, welcoming the very first hints of the spring that's just around the corner. And how does our year-long journey end? With an absolute explosion of color, of course. That's Falgun for you, the most vibrant, colorful finale you could ever imagine. This is the month that drenches everyone in the joy and colors of Holi, and also honors the sacred festival of Mahashivaratri. Falgun waves a fond farewell to the old year, leaving behind this trail of happiness and excitement for the new one that's about to begin. So, you see how it all connects? From the fresh, new beginnings of Chaitra, through the arrival of the monsoon and Ashad, the victory celebrations of Ashwin, the peak light of Kartik, the deep cold of Posh, all the way to Falgun's colorful farewell. The circle is perfect and unbroken.
Each month flows right into the next, and every single one has a crucial part to play in the grand story of the year. So, after getting to know all 12 of these amazing personalities, I have one last question for you. Which one are you? Are you the hopeful beginner, like Chaitra? The dazzling life of the party, like Kartik? Or maybe the quiet, reflective soul of Pash? After meeting them all, which month's personality is yours? You know that feeling, right? When you're trying to explain something, some huge emotion, but the words just aren't there? Well, that's what we're diving into today. How art can become this amazing language for our feelings, basically stepping in to speak for us when words just fail.
I mean, think about it. It could be that knot in your stomach, or that sudden rush of pure joy, or maybe just the quiet sadness that settles in. It's so complex, so layered, that when you try to describe it, it just falls flat. It feels like you're showing someone a black and white photo of a brilliant sunset. And that right there is what this is all about. This simple idea holds so much truth. Art gives a voice to those feelings that live just beyond our vocabulary. It can give form to something that feels, well, formless. So, how does it actually do that? Let's get into it.
All right, so we all depend on words every single day. But what happens when they just aren't enough? In this first part, we're going to explore why art is such a powerful and sometimes necessary alternative for communication, especially when our emotions get really big.
First off, what are we even talking about when we say art? At its heart, it's really about using your imagination to create something, whether it's a physical object or just an experience that communicates. It's not about making something perfect or pretty. It's about taking an idea, or more importantly, a feeling, and making it real, something you can see and interact with.
Now, let's take a step back and see where this all begins. Because art isn't just some high-minded thing for adults in galleries. No, it's a fundamental building block for how we develop, right from when we're little kids. For kids, creating art is a whole journey. When they're really little, say 3 to 5, it's all about sensory play, right? Squishing clay, smearing finger paint. And all the while, they're building those super important fine motor skills. Then, as they get a bit older, maybe 6 to 10, they start using art to tell stories, to show you what their world looks like. And by the time they hit those preteen and teen years, they're off exploring all kinds of different materials and really starting to find their own unique style. It's a really cool progression to watch. And the benefits? They're huge, and they're all connected. You can see how one thing leads to another, right? Getting better with their hands builds confidence. Being able to communicate their pictures helps them express who they are. It's not just about making crafts, it's this amazing, holistic tool for growth. And you know, that sense of calm and focus, that's not just for kids. Let's look at how all of us can use art as a seriously powerful tool to handle the stress and anxiety that life throws at us. A perfect example of this is the mandala. You've probably seen them. It's a circular design, usually with all these cool geometric patterns. The real magic, though, is in the process of making one. The focused, repetitive action of drawing or coloring it in can get you into what's called a flow state, you know, where you're just completely in the zone. It's incredibly meditative and really helps to quiet down a busy mind. And as you can see here, they can be so different. On one hand, you've got these clean, simple geometric shapes. And on the other, you have these incredibly intricate, colorful patterns. But both do the same thing. They pull your focus away from whatever you're worrying about and plant you firmly in the present moment. But hey, if super detailed patterns aren't really your thing, there's a much more organic way to do this. Nature art. It's as simple as it sounds. Go outside, gather some leaves, twigs, cool-looking rocks, and just create something. It's a fantastic way to connect with the calming energy of the outdoors, and best of all, it's completely free. Or you could go abstract. This is all about forgetting the pressure to make something look real. Just focus on colors, on textures. Let your feelings guide your hand. If you're angry, maybe your brushstrokes are sharp and fast and red. If you're feeling peaceful, maybe they're slow and flowing and blue. It's like a direct line from your emotions to the canvas. Speaking of anger, let's zoom in on that one for a second, because it can be a really tough one to deal with. Art can create this incredibly effective and, most importantly, safe container for processing anger, especially for kids. So here's the problem. Asking a kid to talk about why they're mad is often a dead end. It can be totally overwhelming. They just don't have the words for it. But art gives them another way. It's a safe, nonverbal outlet to get that huge, intense feeling out of their body and onto a piece of paper, where they can actually look at it and start to control. A really great classic technique for this is called the anger volcano. The kid draws a volcano, they fill it up with all the things that are making them angry, and then they draw the big eruption. This works so well because it helps them externalize the feeling. That big, scary anger isn't inside them anymore. It's right there on the paper. It becomes something separate that they can actually look at, understand, and manage instead of just being overwhelmed by it. The benefits here are just huge. It gives kids a safe outlet, it helps them figure out what they're feeling, and it literally helps calm their bodies down. But maybe most importantly, it teaches them healthy ways to cope and gives them a sense of control, which is just a massive boost to their self-esteem. Okay, so after seeing all this, you might be thinking, this is great, but I can't even draw a convincing stick figure. Well, this last section is all about unlocking that inner artist that, trust me, every single one of us has inside. Here are the most important things you need to remember. First, and this is the big one, you do not need any artistic skill at all. This is about the process of getting your feelings out, not about the finished product. Make sure you're in a comfortable, non-judgmental space. Pay attention to the feelings that come up as you create. And of course, if you're dealing with really big stuff, it's always a good idea to chat with a professional art therapist. And the power of this approach, it's recognized all over the world. Just look at the work UNICEF Ambassador Priyanka Chopra has done with refugee children. She's used art therapy to help them process trauma that is just unimaginable. It gives them a way to express love and anger and hope and fear in situations where words are either impossible or just not enough. And that really brings us to the final, most empowering point of all. You don't need fancy paints or an expensive easel. The only tool you truly need is the willingness to just be open, to explore your own feelings and to give them some kind of voice, whatever that ends up looking like. So I'll just leave you with this one question to mull over. Whether you grab a crayon, a paintbrush, or just a couple of twigs from the backyard, what's the first feeling you're going to put on paper?
एक गलती जो हम सब करते हैं, हमारा पैसा सेविंग अकाउंट में पड़े रहने देते हैं, जहाँ पे सिर्फ 2-3% इंटरेस्ट मिलता है, इसमें फायदा सिर्फ बैंक का होता है, हमारा नहीं। इसका एक सिंपल सोल्यूशन है, अपने आइडियल पैसे को
They see my disability, I see my ability. They call me disabled, I call myself differently able. There are some incidents that happen in your life. Those incidents break you, deform you, but they mold you into the best version of you. And the same thing happened to me. I was 18 years old when I got married. My father wanted me to get married. And all I said was, if that makes you happy, I'll say yes. And of course, it was never a happy marriage. Just about after 2 years of getting married, I met a car accident. Somehow my husband fell asleep and the car fell in the ditch. He managed to jump out, saved himself. I'm happy for him. But I stayed inside the car and I sustained a lot of injuries. The list is a bit long, don't get scared. The wrist was fractured. Shoulder bone and collarbone were fractured. My whole rib cage got fractured. And because of the rib cage injury, lungs and liver were badly injured. I couldn't breathe. I lost urinary bowel control. That's why I have to wear the bag wherever I go. 3 vertebrae of my backbone were completely crushed, and I got paralyzed for the rest of my life. I finally ended up in a hospital where I stayed for 2.5 months. I underwent multiple surgeries. One day, doctor came to me and he said, well, I heard that you wanted to be an artist, but you ended up being a housewife. I have a bad news for you. You won't be able to paint again because your wrist and your arm are so deformed, you won't be able to hold a pen again. Next day, doctor came to me and said, your spine injury is so bad, you won't be able to walk again. Because of your spine injury and the fixation that you have in your back, you won't be able to give birth to a child again. That day, I was devastated. I asked my mother, why me? And that is where I started to question my existence. Why am I even alive? And that is where I realized that the words have the power to heal the soul. My mother said to me, this too shall pass. God has a greater plan for you. I don't know what it is, but He surely has. And in all that distress and grief, somehow or the other, those words were so magical that they kept me going. One day I asked my brothers, I know I have a deformed hand, but I'm tired of looking at these white walls in the hospital and wearing these white scrubs. I'm getting tired of this. I want to add more colors to my life. I want to do something. Bring me some colors, bring me some small canvas. I want to paint. So the very first painting I made was on my deathbed, where I painted for the very first time. It was not just an art piece or just my passion. It was my therapy. And then I was discharged and I went back home. And I went back home and I realized that I have developed a lot of pressure ulcers on my back and on my hip bone. I was unable to sit. There were a lot of infections in my body, a lot of allergies. So doctors wanted me to lie down on the bed straight for not 6 months, for not 1 year, for 2 years. I was bedridden, confined in that one room, looking outside the window, listening to the birds chirping, and thinking maybe there will be a time when we'll be going out with the family and enjoying the nature. That was the time where I realized how lucky people are. That is the time where I realized that the day I'm going to sit, I'm going to share this pain with everyone to make them realize how blessed they are, and they don't even consider them lucky. That day I decided that I'm going to fight my fears. We all have fears. Fear of unknown, fear of losing people, fear of losing health, money. We want to excel in career, we want to become famous, we want to get money. We are scared all the time. So I wrote down one by one all those fears, and I decided that I'm going to overcome these fears one at a time. You know what was my biggest fear? Divorce. I was trying to cling on to this person who didn't want me anymore, but I said no. I have to make it work. But the day I decided that this is nothing but my fear, I liberated myself by setting him free. And I made myself emotionally so strong that the day I got the news that he's getting married, I sent him a text that I'm so happy for you and I wish you all the best. And he knows that I pray for him today. Number 2 was, I won't be able to be a mother again. And that was quite devastating for me. But then I realized there are so many children in the world, all they want is acceptance. So there is no point of crying, just go and adopt one. And that's what I did. People think that they will not be accepted by the people because we, in the world of perfect people, are imperfects. So I decided that instead of starting an NGO for disability awareness, which I know will not help anyone, I started to appear more in public. I started to paint. I decided that I'm going to join the national TV of Pakistan as an anchor person. And I've been doing a lot of shows for the last 3 years. I became the National Goodwill Ambassador for UN Women Pakistan, and now I speak for the rights of women, children. We talk about inclusion, diversity, gender equality, which is a must. Every time I go in public, I always smile. It's always a big toothy smile on my face, and people ask me, don't you get tired of smiling all the time? What's the secret? I always say one thing, that I have stopped worrying about the things that I have lost, the people that I have lost. Things and people who were meant to be with me are with me. And sometimes, somebody's absence makes you a better person. Cherish their absence. It's all fully. Accept yourself the way you are. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. I'll repeat, be kind to yourself. And only then you can be kind to others. Love yourself and spread that love. Life will be hard, there will be turmoil, there will be trials, but that will only make you stronger. So when you accept yourself the way you are, the world recognizes you. It all starts from within.
क्या नाम है आपके बच्चे का? थोड़ा जोर से बोलिएगा।
इन्होंने पैर रखना बंद कर दिया और उंगलियां भी।
उसके पहले चलती थी ये?
हाँ, उसके पहले ये 1 साल 8 महीने की थी, तब तक ये चलती थी।
नहीं, ये कितने साल की थी जब आप इसे यहाँ लाई हैं?
तब ये 3 साल 4 महीने।
और उसके पहले क्या? जी,
इससे पहले तो हमने कई जगह मतलब कई डॉक्टर से।
नहीं, इसने अपना नॉर्मल चलना फिरना सब नॉर्मली शुरू किया?
हाँ, नॉर्मली शुरू किया।
कितनी बड़ी थी, चलने लगी? कितने साल की थी?
1 साल 8 महीने की थी, 2 साल पूरे होने वाले थे।
जब चलना स्टार्ट किया है?
चलना तो 1 साल के अंदर स्टार्ट कर दिया था इन्होंने।
जी।
और जब इनका जो इंजेक्शन लगा था तब ये 1 साल 8 महीने की थी।
इंजेक्शन क्यों क्या हुआ था ये बताइए?
बुखार आया,
फीवर आया, डॉक्टर को दिखाया आपने?
डॉक्टर को दिखाया तो फीवर कम नहीं हुआ।
आप कहाँ से हैं, किस शहर से? सीतापुर से। हाँ, सीतापुर से।
ये सीतापुर के पास एक कस्बा है महमूदाबाद।
जी। फिर डॉक्टर को दिखाया आपने?
हाँ, डॉक्टर को हमने दिखाया और फीवर कम नहीं हुआ तो उन्होंने कहा इंजेक्शन लगा दें। इन्होंने इंजेक्शन लगा दिया और जैसे ही हम घर पे आए फिर इसने पैर रखना मतलब पैर रखा ही नहीं जमीन में और उंगलियाँ भी मूव नहीं कर रही थी। तुरंत हम लेके गए डॉक्टर के पास। उन्होंने कहा हमने बस ऐसे ही एंटीबायोटिक इंजेक्शन दिया है और कुछ ज़्यादा ध्यान नहीं दिया। फिर दूसरे दिन गए, उन्होंने कहा दर्द की शिकायत करिए, उससे सही हो जाएगा। पैर तब भी इसने नहीं रखा और बहुत रो रही थी, मतलब अब पता नहीं इन्हें पेन हो रहा था या क्या। उसके बाद फिर हमने डॉक्टर मनोज सिंह को दिखाया।
ये कहाँ है?
ये लखनऊ में
जी।
इंजीनियरिंग चौराहे पर। तो उन्होंने भी बस मेडिसिन दे दी थी, बाकी कुछ बताया नहीं हमें। फिर थोड़े दिन बाद हमें फिजियोथेरेपिस्ट मिले डॉक्टर, उन्होंने अपनी एक्सरसाइज स्टार्ट कर दी थी। फिर उन्हीं के
तब तक बच्ची ने चलना नहीं शुरू किया था?
चलना शुरू
किस कंडीशन में थी पूरी उसकी कंडीशन उस वक्त की बताइए?
ये पैर नहीं रख रही थी, मतलब चलती नहीं थी। उसके बाद जब हमने
दोनों पैर या एक पैर?
नहीं, एक पैर। फिर जब इसने चलना स्टार्ट किया तो बस ये ऐसे पैर उठा के चल रही थी। उंगलियाँ क्योंकि मूव नहीं कर रही थी तो पूरा पंजा जमीन में नहीं रखता था इन्हें और वो उठा के चल रही थी। तो हमारे एक रिलेशन में डॉक्टर है वहीं महमूदाबाद में, तो उनके यहाँ फिजियोथेरेपिस्ट आते थे। तो जब उन्होंने हमें बताया इनको तो तब इनके डायरिया हो गया था। तो फिर हमने मना कर दिया था इंजेक्शन लगाने से। कहा नहीं बेटा इंजेक्शन लगवाओ और हमारे यहाँ एक आते हैं फिजियोथेरेपिस्ट, हम एक्सरसाइज इनकी स्टार्ट करवा देंगे तो फिर थोड़ा रिलीफ होगा तो शायद उंगलियाँ सही हो जाए। तो हमने फिजियोथेरेपी इनकी स्टार्ट कर दी। तो लगभग 1 साल हमने इनकी फिजियोथेरेपी स्टार्ट की। उसके बाद फिर उन्हीं के
1 साल चलती रही फिजियोथेरेपी?
हाँ, 1 साल चलती रही।
तो उससे क्या बेटर हुआ कुछ?
कैसे क्या इन्होंने चलना स्टार्ट कर दिया, उंगलियां बहुत ज़्यादा मूवती थी लेकिन हाँ थोड़ी बहुत ये खाने लगी थी।
जी।
फिर उन्हीं के जरिए डॉक्टर विपुल का नंबर हमें मिला।
जी।
फिर तुरंत उनके पास आए
डॉक्टर विपुल शाह। जी। फिर जब आप लेके आई हैं बच्ची को पहली बार यहाँ, क्या आपको याद है कितनी बड़ी थी ये?
तब ये 3 साल 4 महीने की।
3 साल 4 महीने की। कितना टाइम हो गया है?
लगभग 1 साल से 2 साल तो वही गए होंगे। ये 1 साल 8 महीने की थी और ये 3 साल 4 महीने की थी।
जी।
1 साल तक तो टाइम बीच में मिल गया है।
जब आप पहली बार यहाँ लाई हैं तब आपकी बच्ची क्या कर पाती थी, कैसे?
तो मतलब चल लेती थी लेकिन बस यही पैर उठा के चलती थी, बराबर पैर नहीं रखती।
जी। फिर उसके बाद
सर ने फिर एक ऑपरेशन किया, प्लास्टर दिया।
जी।
और एक्सरसाइज तब भी सर ने बताई, तब परमानेंट इन्होंने एक्सरसाइज सर ने बता दी थी आप रोज़ करवाइए। 2 महीने तो हमने रोज़ करवाई एक्सरसाइज, वहीं जहाँ हमारी फिजियोथेरेपी होती थी वहीं जाते थे करवाने। पहले भी उन्होंने की थी और सर के बाद भी हमने वहीं करवाई। सर ने कहा था आप वहीं करवाइए एक्सरसाइज। तो 2 महीने तो हम लगातार जाते थे सीतापुर, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ वो आते नहीं थे। सीतापुर हमें जाना पड़ता था, रोज़ लेके जाते थे, उनकी मशीन से लगाते थे और एक्सरसाइज करते थे, करते थे। उसके बाद फिर सर का ट्रीटमेंट चलता रहा। सर ने बता दी थी एक्सरसाइज, घर पे करवाते थे। एक मशीन भी सर ने दिला दी थी हमें।
ऑपरेशन हुआ है जहाँ?
सर FI हॉस्पिटल।
हम बच्ची है आपके साथ, बच्ची को दिखा सकती कहाँ पे ऑपरेशन हुआ है? दिखाइए। आपको निशान ढूंढ के दिखा सकती हैं?
निशान तो ढूंढना मुश्किल होगा।
कितना समय हो गया ऑपरेशन का?
9 साल हो रहा है।
जी। अब आपकी बच्ची कैसी है?
नॉर्मल है, चलने दौड़ने में।
क्या कोई देख कर कह सकता है कोई प्रॉब्लम?
नहीं, अब तो कोई नहीं कह सकता है। हमारी बच्ची पहले ऐसे दिखती थी, तो बिल्कुल नामुमकिन हो चुके थे ना, जब इसने चलना स्टार्ट किया था।
जब आप यहाँ आई हैं पहली बार, उसके बाद कितना समय लगा आपको?
यहाँ 9 साल लगे।
नहीं नहीं, कितना समय लगा इसे नॉर्मल होने में, ठीक से चलने में?
चलने में तो 10 साल लग गए। ये 1 साल 8 महीने की थी,
जी।
अभी इंजेक्शन लग गया था।
नहीं नहीं, आप जब से यहाँ आई हैं, यहाँ आने के बाद कितना समय आपको?
यहाँ आने के बाद 2008 से स्टार्ट हुआ इनका ट्रीटमेंट। हाँ, 9 साल हो गए।
कितना संतुष्ट हैं आप ट्रीटमेंट से बच्चे के? आपको क्या लगता है बच्चे को देखकर कोई कहेगा कुछ प्रॉब्लम हुई थी?
नहीं, कुछ भी नहीं। अब तो कोई भी, मतलब हमारे रिलेशन में भी कोई नहीं समझ सकता है कि ये कैसी प्रॉब्लम थी।
चलिए ठीक है, थैंक यू। जी मैम, आप काव्या की मदर हैं? पूरा नाम क्या है आपकी बच्ची का? कहाँ से आती हैं आप? हमीरपुर से। जी, क्या प्रॉब्लम हुई थी आपकी बच्ची के साथ?
मेरी बच्ची ने जब चलना शुरू किया तो ये पैर थोड़ा सा राइट वाला थोड़ा सा मतलब बाहर को रखती थी वो।
जी।
पैर सीधा न रख के थोड़ा सा बाहर को रखती थी।
कितनी बड़ी हो गई जब आपने देखा इसे, इस चीज़ को नोटिस करने में?
इसको 1 साल से कम की थी, मतलब
वही 10-11 महीने पे।
हाँ।
तब इसने क्या करना शुरू किया था? चलना शुरू किया था इंडिपेंडेंटली?
नहीं, पहले तो ये वैसे चलती थी, मतलब जैसे छोटे बच्चे चलते नहीं है जमीन में
क्रॉल करके।
हाँ।
जी।
और फिर धीरे धीरे अपना खड़ी हुई और चलना शुरू किया इसने।
जी।
तो सबसे पहले तो ये वॉकर से चलती थी, तो
जी।
इनके बाबा जी वॉकर ले आए थे, तो उसी से चलती थी। तो जब इसने चलना शुरू किया तो हमने देखा, तो हमें ये लगा कि ये छोटी है, इसलिए इसको शायद मतलब पापा ने वॉकर दिला दिया, तो इसलिए इसके पैर नहीं पहुँचते हैं, तो इसकी वैसी आदत पड़ गई चलने की। हमने तो यही सोचा, तो धीरे धीरे चलने लगेगी सही से। फिर इसकी दादी ने देखा, फिर उन्होंने बताया कि ये इसको दिक्कत है। फिर हम लोगों ने डॉक्टर साहब को पता किया, डॉक्टर साहब को पता किया।
जी।
मतलब ये मालूम पड़ा कि डॉक्टर साहब एक लखनऊ में है, उनका मतलब उनसे संपर्क किया हम लोगों ने और उनसे बात की, और हमको लगा कि मतलब वास्तव में मतलब सही हो सकता है। और
ये कितनी बड़ी थी बच्ची जब यहाँ पहली बार आप आई हैं?
ये 1 साल से कम थी।
11 महीने, 10 महीने?
हाँ, ऐसी थी, 10-11 महीने की थी।
जी जी, जब पहली बार आप यहाँ आई हैं। जी, इसके बाद क्या क्या ट्रीटमेंट हुआ इसका?
इसके बाद डॉक्टर साहब ने इसका सबसे पहली बार बुलाया, तो डॉक्टर साहब ने बताया कि इसका मतलब ऑपरेशन करना पड़ेगा।
किस चीज़ का ऑपरेशन? क्या समस्या क्या बताई? कूल्हे में कोई समस्या? जी, कूल्हे में आप समस्या बताई, फिर आपने क्या किया उसके बाद?
डॉक्टर साहब ने बताया कि इसको ये समस्या है।
जी जी।
और फिर ठीक है
जी
इसका इलाज करवाएंगे।
जी।
हम लोगों ने पूरी तरह से सोच लिया कि हम कितनी भी दिक्कत हो।
इसके बाद ऑपरेशन के लिए बोला गया?
हाँ, ऑपरेशन के लिए बोला गया, डॉक्टर साहब ने ऑपरेशन किया।
जी।
हम लोगों को वैसे तो
ऑपरेशन के बाद कैसा रिस्पॉन्स रहा, कैसा रिजल्ट रहा बच्ची का?
ऑपरेशन के बाद तो तुरंत तो नहीं पता चलता,
जी।
धीरे धीरे मतलब
जी
जब ये चलने लगी, सही रिस्पॉन्स
जी।
तो तब मिला जब ये चलने लगी।
जी जी।
और तभी समझ में आया हम लोगों को, नहीं ये पैर जब तक पहले रखे उससे अब सही
अभी आप जी अभी आपके बच्चे के साथ कोई प्रॉब्लम?
अभी तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं।
कितना टाइम हो गया है ऑपरेशन हुए?
इसको 1 साल के ऊपर हो गया है।
जी जी। अब इसको कोई देखकर बता सकता है इससे पहले जैसी कोई समस्या?
नहीं, इसको वैसे तो देख के कोई नहीं बता पाता है कि इसको ये दिक्कत है ये।
जी। आप कितना संतुष्ट हैं ऑपरेशन के बाद?
हम तो मैं पूरा संतुष्ट है, मतलब बस हमको तो ये लग रहा था कि हमारी बच्ची किसी तरह से सही हो जाएगा। हमारे लिए तो मतलब जैसे लोग कहते हैं कि डॉक्टर एक भगवान का रूप होते हैं, उन्होंने मतलब पूरा प्रयास किया, हम लोगों ने किया, तो हम लोगों को लगता है कि वास्तव में अगर मतलब इस तरह की दिक्कत हो तो सही हो सकती है।
जी जी। ये जो आपके पीछे बच्ची खड़ी है इसको जरा आगे करके दिखाएंगी आप? आ जाइए बेटू, आप आगे आइए। जी। अब इसको नीचे उतार के खड़ा करिए जरा।
ऐसे खड़ी हुई बाबू, ऐसे काव्या नीचे खड़ी हो, ऐसे।
क्या नाम है आपका?
नाम बोलिए अपना, नाम बताइए अपना, नाम बताइए मैम को अपना।
काव्या।
नाम बताइए सीधे, नाम आपका क्या? बोलिए अपना नाम काव्या।
चलिए, बहुत अच्छा लगा आपसे बात करके, और बच्चे के साथ आप इसी तरह प्रॉपर केयर करते रहिए, ठीक है? और आपकी बच्ची ठीक हो गई, आप संतुष्ट हैं, बहुत अच्छा लगा, थैंक यू। हेलो मित्रों, स्वागत है आप सभी का एक बार फिर। हाँ, तो जुड़ जाओ आप लोग जल्दी जल्दी। जब आप लोग जुड़ते हो तो देखकर अच्छा लगता है। कल हम लोग बात कर रहे थे कार्ड्स की, कैसे कार्ड्स, राशिफल के कार्ड्स की, कितनी राशियां होती हैं हमारी, उनके कौन कौन से कार्ड्स होते हैं, और इस हफ्ते के क्या कार्ड्स आए हैं, इस हफ्ते के मतलब होली के क्या क्या कार्ड्स आए हैं। तो हम इन्हीं की बात कंटिन्यू रखेंगे। कल हमने बात करी थी 6 राशियों की, कौन कौन सी, मेष, वृष, मिथुन, कर्क, सिंह, कन्या। और आज जिन राशियों की हम बात करने वाले हैं उनमें सबसे पहली राशि, ये 7वें नंबर की राशि है, सबसे पहली राशि है तुला। तुला जिसका ये कार्ड है आज, द पेज ऑफ पेंटिकल्स। अरे भाई पेज है, अब आप लोग सोच रहे होंगे क्या होली का मौसम है और ये पढ़ने लिखने की चीजें लेकर बैठ गए। अरे ये वो वाला पेज नहीं है, ये वो वाला पेज है जब आप सब कुछ रखो कोरा कोरा, था सब कोरा कोरा, और उसके बाद उसको रंगीन कर दो, पूरे पेज का रंग ही बदल दो, ये वो वाला पेज है। आपको मिला है ना, तो आप मौका मत गवाओ, इसको रंगीन कर दो। और इसमें जो आगे की मैं बात करूं, ये तुला राशि वालों को पसंद क्या है, कौन सा रंग पसंद है। सबसे पहले मैं रंग ही बताऊं तो उनका रंग है पेल ब्लू। पेल ब्लू मतलब समझते हो ना आप, हल्का पीला जो होता है, पीला होता है लेकिन पूरा गाढ़ा नहीं। फिर रुकिए आते हैं, हल्का पीला जो होता है, पीला होता है लेकिन पूरा गाढ़ा नहीं। फिर रुकिए आते हैं, हल्का पीला रंग है तो आप हल्के पीले रंग में, पीला रंग आपने रखा, उसमें कुछ और मिलाकर भी काम चला सकते हैं। तो हल्के पीले रंग में हल्का पीला ही करना है उनको, पेल पेल करना है। चलिए पेल येलो की बात करते हैं, लेकिन ये जानिए बहुत ही मजबूत प्रवृत्ति के हैं और इस बार जो है ना इनका मजबूती और बढ़ी है। होली के मौसम में मजबूती अपनी दिखाएंगे। मजबूती क्यों और कैसे दिखाएंगे कि भैया सामने वाले को बिना रंगे, बिना रंग से सराबोर कर जाने नहीं देना है, और बस यही ये लोग दिखाने वाले हैं। और इनका ना ये हमेशा त्रिकोण बनाते हैं, इनको त्रिकोण बनाना पसंद है। त्रिकोण का मतलब क्या, त्रिकोण जैसे ये बनाएंगे, किसी एक बंदे को इन्होंने पकड़ लिया और उस बंदे को पकड़ लो और फिर दूसरा इनके लिए रंगों का इस्तेमाल करेगा। ये जो है ना या तो ये पकड़ेंगे या तो रंग लगाएंगे। तो इनसे इस मामले में बहुत बच के रहना, इनसे तुला राशि वालों से, कि ये हमेशा दूसरों का इस्तेमाल करते हैं। आप होंगे, एक वो होंगे, लेकिन कोई तीसरा भी होगा, ठीक है। रंग बहुत गाढ़ा नहीं, हल्का ही लगाएंगे। और इनका शुभ दिन, होली का दिन इनका बहुत ही शुभ दिन है। और इनको जो ना, इनको छोड़ना, तुला राशि वालों को जब तक आप रंग नहीं लगाते हैं तब तक आपकी होली अच्छी नहीं होती है। ये तो आपके राशि फल की बात है, ठीक है। उम्मीद है आप समझ गए होंगे। और इसके बाद अगली जो राशि आती है तुला के बाद, इसकी बात करते हैं, यह है हमारी वृश्चिक राशि। और ये जो वृश्चिक राशि है, इसका कार्ड आया है द 7 ऑफ कप। अब पटाना का मतलब एक ही नहीं पटाना होता है, पटाना का मतलब एक ही नहीं पटाना होता है। पट बनाने का साथ अच्छे से होली खेलने के लिए, बनाने का साथ अच्छे से होली खेलने के लिए उसके ऊपर समुद्री हरा डालो, लेकिन आप उसके ऊपर समुद्री हरा डालो, लेकिन आप अपने ऊपर जो रंग वो डालना चाहे वो डलवा लो। तब तो होली है, तब तो आपकी और उसकी दोनों की बल्ले बल्ले है, नहीं तो मुश्किल होगा, ठीक है। मुझे उम्मीद है निश्चित हो गई। और एक राशि अब आती है इसके बाद तीसरे नंबर, आज की तीसरे नंबर की राशि है, वो है धनु। अच्छा हाँ, इनमें से एक बात तो हम भूल ही गए आपको बताना, और वो से एक बात तो हम भूल ही गए आपको बताना, और वो कौन बात है, दिवाली। जिनका अब दिसंबर का मतलब ये नहीं होता है कि दिसंबर हो गया तो साल खत्म हो गया, ऐसा नहीं है। चैरियट अंग्रेजी का शब्द, चैरियट आप सर्च किए ना, तो ये बात जरूर ध्यान रखना कि ये जो है ना, ये अपनी आंखें हमेशा अपने उद्देश्य पे को अपने कहीं इधर उधर जाने नहीं देते। इनके उन सभी चुनौतियों पर आपको खड़े उतरना है और आगे बढ़ना है। जब आप अपना बचाव करें, बचाव के साथ साथ बचाव तब आपका होगा जब आप इनके साथ मुकाबला भी कर सकें। मुकाबला बहुत जरूरी है। बचाव करें और बचाव अगर नहीं कर पाते तो मुकाबला करें, बचने से रहे, बच नहीं पाएंगे। उनकी तैयारी बहुत गजब की होती है। साथ और ये कैसे संभव है, ये तभी संभव है जब इनसे आप मुकाबला करेंगे। ये बात कर रहे हैं हम ना धनु राशि वालों की। और इनका पसंदीदा रंग, इनका जो रंग शुभ रंग है आप जानते हैं, सिल्वर है इनका शुभ रंग। बस कुछ ना करो, उनको चांदी जैसे रंग में चांदी चांदी कर दो, आप खुश हो जाएंगे जैसे ही आप इनको चांदी चांदी करते हो। और थोड़ा सा जूस उस पिला दो, जूस पिला दो, थोड़ा सा शेयर कर लो इनके साथ, इनको भी ताकत मिलेगी, आपको भी सहूलियत रहेगी। और जब इनको पकड़कर रंग लगाओगे तो इनसे बच भी जाओगे और होली भी मना पाओगे। ये भाई हम धनु राशि वाले भैया। अब आते हैं अगले नंबर पर, और इनका नंबर है मकर। मकर, अरे वो संसद वाला मकर द्वार मत समझना, मकर राशि है हमारी। और ये आखिरी से तीसरी राशि आती है। मकर राशि के वो लोग होते हैं जिनका जन्म 22 दिसंबर से 19 जनवरी के बीच में होता है। 22 दिसंबर से 19 जनवरी के बीच में जन्मे लोग मकर राशि के होते हैं। और इस बार जो इस हफ्ते का मकर राशि का कार्ड आया है वो क्या है? मकर राशि का कार्ड है द क्वीन ऑफ पेंटिकल्स। मकर राशि कोई भी राशि के हो, चाहे वो पुरुष हो, चाहे स्त्री हो, चाहे कोई भी हो, इनका कार्ड क्वीन पर आया है। चलिए, ये भी बहुत अच्छा है कि आप एक क्वीन के साथ रंग खेल रहे हैं। बहुत अच्छी बात है आपके लिए भी, इनके लिए भी। तो इनका क्या है, ये चमक धमक अंधेरे को भुला देंगे। अगर आपको लगता है कि आप अंधेरे में रहना पसंद करते हैं तो ये आपके बिल्कुल ही विपरीत है। चमक दमक में रहना पसंद करते हैं और जहां भी जाते हैं जो एक चमक दमक बिखेर देते हैं। ये इनकी एक खास बात है कि ये अगर कोई परेशान है, कमजोर है, तो उसकी मदद भी बहुत बढ़ चढ़ कर करते हैं। तो सबसे बढ़िया बात, अगर इनसे जीतना है आपको तो आप दिखा दो आपको कुछ आता ही नहीं है, आप कुछ नहीं जानते हो, पीछे से पकड़ के इनको रंग में सराबोर कर दो। और ना अपने विपक्षियों से बहुत सजग रहते हैं, तो आप भी इनसे सजग रहना। सजग रहते रहते आप सब कर देना। उनका शुभ रंग जो है ना, क्रीम वाला रंग, क्रीम कलर, याद है ना आपको? क्रीम कलर इनका शुभ रंग है। तो आप कुछ ना मिले आपको, सीधा क्रीम ही पूछ दो। हाँ हाँ बिल्कुल, क्रीम आप इनको लगा सकते हो। इनका शुभ रंग है भाई, इनकी शुभता और आप बढ़ा दो। चलो, कुछ और अच्छा करना हो तो इनको भाई क्रीम से बनी हुई कोई मिठाई खिला दो। मिठाई मतलब क्रीम के ऊपर कोई टॉपिंग कर दो, मिठाई के ऊपर टॉपिंग कर दो क्रीम की, क्रीम खिला दो। तो ये बात कर रहे थे हम मकर राशि की। अब अगली जो राशि है हमारी कुंभ, क्योंकि कुंभ राशि ना इस बार उसका कार्ड गजबे आया है बिल्कुल। कुंभ राशि का कार्ड क्या आया है? अच्छा, जिनका जन्म 20 जनवरी से 18 फरवरी के बीच होता है। 20 जनवरी से 18 फरवरी के बीच। तो इनके कार्ड की हम बात कर रहे थे, इनका कार्ड तो एकदम में गजब आया। इनका कार्ड क्या आया है भैया? कार्ड का नाम आपको बताएं, कार्ड का नाम आया है गजब है। और इनके पास आप जाओगे तो ये इस हफ्ते पूरा बदल के रख देंगे, क्योंकि जो डेथ कार्ड है इनका कुंभ राशि, अच्छा भी लगता है, बदलाव बुरा अच्छा। और बदलाव बुरा तब लगता है जब हमको ये लगता है हमारी लाइफ में सब कुछ सही सही चल रहा है और कहीं कुछ गड़बड़ ना हो। उस स्थिति में क्या होता है, अच्छा और बुरा दोनों तरह से होता है। तो डेथ एक बहुत बड़ा बदलाव है। ये जो ना बाहरी बातों पर, हवाई बातों पर बिलीव नहीं करते। कौन? कुंभ राशि वाले हवाई बातों पर बिलीव नहीं करते और क्या करते हैं कि हर बात की तह तक इनको जानना है। हर बात की तह तक। और ये ना होता है, हमेशा अपने डर को पहचानते हैं और डर को पहचानते हुए मुकाबला भी करते हैं। मुकाबला करना इन द सेंस कि ये भविष्य के लिए अपने आप को तैयार करते हैं। ये होता है इनका रंग रूप। और इस तरह से कर भविष्य में अपनी जिंदगी का आनंद ले सकते हैं। और अब बात करते हैं इनके शुभ रंग की। जो हम सबका शुभ रंग है वही कुंभ वालों का भी शुभ रंग है। कौन सा है कुंभ वालों का शुभ रंग? कुंभ वालों का शुभ रंग है नीला। वही जो सारे भारत का रंग है, वही जो हमारी टीम का रंग है। कुंभ वालों का भी शुभ रंग है नीला। कभी भी आप कभी भी इनसे बात करिए तो ये आपको बदलने की प्रवृत्ति रखते हैं। वैसे जो दूसरों को बदलने की प्रवृत्ति रखते हैं वो खुद भी बहुत बड़े बदलाव के वाहक होते हैं, खुद को भी बदलते हैं। अब बात करते हैं आज की अंतिम राशि की। आज की राशियों में सबसे अंतिम राशि की, और यह राशि है हमारी मीन राशि। मीन राशि ऐसी होती है किसकी होती है, सबसे पहले इसकी बात करते हैं। तो मीन राशि उनकी होती है जिन जातकों का जन्म फरवरी से 20 मार्च के बीच में हुआ। 19 फरवरी से 20 मार्च के बीच में जन्मे सभी जातक मीन राशि से संबंधित होते हैं। और इस बार इनका कार्ड आया है द 4 ऑफ पेंटिकल्स। 4 ऑफ पेंटिकल्स, खैर कोई बात नहीं, इनके पास 4 ही नंबर है तो शायद 4 ही रंग लेके आए और आपको इंद्रधनुष न बनाए। और इन राशि वाले जातकों के लिए एक बात है कि जो है ना, इनको जो ताकत ये अर्जित करते हैं ये अंदर से अर्जित करते हैं। इनको जो इंट्यूशन होता है ये अंदर से होता है, चाहे वो होली खेलने की बात हो, चाहे त्योहार मनाने की बात हो, या फिर किसी पर रंग उड़ेलने की बात हो। इनको अगर अंदर से ऐसा लगेगा कि नहीं आपको पूरा रंगों से सराबोर करना है तो आपको ये करके ही छोड़ेंगे। तो अगर आप मीन राशि वालों के साथ होली मनाने का इरादा है, ऐसा मीन राशि में है, आपको सीधा नेवी ब्लू रंग लेकर इनके पास जाना है। नेवी ब्लू क्यों? क्योंकि इस हफ्ते का इनका जो शुभ रंग है और आप होली खेलेंगे इनके साथ तो नेवी ब्लू। ये अगर आप नेवी ब्लू रंग लगा देंगे ना तो 2% इनको खुश होना ही होना है, इनको खुश करना ही करना है। तो आप क्या चाहते हैं? अब आप इनको खुश कर सकते हैं। हमने आपको रंग बता दिया, हमने आपको सुविधाएं बता दी, सब कुछ बता दिया। तो ये बात हो गई मीन राशि तक हम पहुंच गए हैं। मीन राशि तक हमने बात कर ली है और हमने आपको सब बता भी दिया है कि अब किन राशि वालों से किस तरह से रंग खेल। देखो होली का त्योहार है और होली में ना, होली बहुत ही प्रेम और सौहार्द का त्योहार होता है। प्रेम और सौहार्द का मतलब गले लगने का, मिठाई खाने का। सबसे पहली बात तो जो है ना वो बहुत ये कम मौके हमें ऐसे मिलते हैं जब हम अपने आप को किसी के साथ शेयर कर पाते हैं। कहीं काम का बोझ है, कहीं पैसों की चिंता है, कहीं कुछ है, तो क्या होता है ना कि हमारे पास कुछ भी मनाने के मौके बहुत कम मिलते हैं। और इन्हीं मौकों में हमें खुद को संभालना है, रिश्तों को संभालना है। तो मेरा माटी का घर, कच्ची उसकी नींव होती, रिश्तों का धागा वो कच्चा, मुझे बहुत तकलीफ होती। बना घरौंदा माटी का घर, कच्ची उसकी नींव होती, रिश्तों का धागा हो कच्चा, मुझे बहुत तकलीफ होती। प्यार की ये मुफलिसी दे गई, आह से आह से आह का सफर मुकम्मल कर सो गई। बंधन बने थे प्रेम के जो आजीवन साथ निभाने के, तिनकों की मानिंद उड़ गए वो सारे और बात हवा में खो गए। विश्वास स्तंभ पर अड़े ये रिश्ते भित्ति चित्र से लगते हैं, सपनों की तहरीर के आगे अब रिश्ते फीके लगते हैं। सपनों की तहरीर के आगे रिश्ते फीके लगते हैं। झूठ चल फरेब का चक्र और पहर ही चलता है, शक की गुंजाइश सिक्का सच का चलता है। रिश्ते दफन होते आजकल इस अहम काना लड़ाई में, संगरूर से दिल हो गए अब तो बेवफाई में। तू तलाश अपना सुकून कर, उन्मुक्त गगन की ओर तू चल, एक नया रिश्ता स्वयं खुद से खुद को जोड़ के चल। बहुत अच्छी कविता लिखी है। खुद से खुद को जोड़ना है, खुद के आगे बढ़ना है, औरों को साथ लेकर चलना है। ये जो होली होती है, होली हो या कोई भी त्योहार हो, हर त्योहार एक संदेश के साथ आता है कि हमें सभी को लेकर आगे चलना है, सभी के साथ चलना है। आगे निकलने की होड़ तो हम हमेशा करते हैं जब साथ की बात हो, त्योहारों की बात हो, तो हम साथ चलें। और होली एक ऐसा त्योहार जो गले लग कर ही सारे शिकवे मिटा दे, सारी दूरियां मिटा दे। होली में तो वो सब कुछ है जो किसी भी त्योहार में नहीं। कोई बड़ा हो छोटा हो, किसी से आप कभी कभी ही मिलते हो, लेकिन जब होली में मिले तो ऐसे गले लगे कि समझ ही ना आए कि आप कितने दिनों के बाद मिले या इससे पहली बार मिले। हमारा ये प्रयास रहता है जो हमारे सामने है, हम उसको भी इंद्रधनुषी रंगों में सजा लें। हम किसी को दिल में सजाते हैं, आंखों में सजाते हैं, अपने साथ रखते हैं, एक विश्वास जीते हैं किसी के साथ। वो विश्वास बना रहे, प्यार बना रहे, सौहार्द बना रहे। कोई भी धर्म हो, कोई भी जाति हो, कोई माने ख्वाहिश ना हो, कोई गम ना हो। अगर किसी के साथ गम, किसी के पास गम है, तो इस होली आप उसके पास जरूर बैठिए, उसके साथ कुछ समय बिताइए। आपको लगेगा कि हाँ, आपने अच्छा किया है। खुशियाँ तो हम सभी की बांटते हैं, अपनी भी खुशी में हम चाहते हैं कि कोई हमारे पास हो, लेकिन जब बहुत दर्द होता है जिंदगी में, तब क्या? दर्द में किसी की एक छोटी सी आहट भी हमारे सारे जख्मों को भर देती है। थोड़ी देर के लिए, भले ही थोड़ी देर के लिए, लेकिन हमें लगता है कि हम सब कुछ भूल गए। इस होली आप कम से कम एक ही चेहरे पर खुशी लाएं। आपका प्रयास हो कि कुछ अच्छा करें, किसी एक चेहरे पर जरूर खुशी लाएं। और ऐसा नहीं है कि आप जो है करिए कि वो और जिन लोगों से मिले, उनके तो आपको इन अच्छाइयों के साथ रंगों को मनाना है, रंगों के त्योहार को मनाना है। हाँ, आप सोचे सो गई। मैंने शुरुआत तो यहाँ से नहीं करी थी। चारों तरफ गुलाल ही गुलाल है। अच्छा, आप ये भी कोशिश करिएगा कि सिंथेटिक रंग लगाइए। कौन से लगाएंगे? कुछ भी करिए, कैसे भी रंग खेलिए, तकलीफ नहीं है किसी को। आपके रंगों से किसी को परहेज ना हो। आपकी हंसी से किसी को चिढ़ना, बस इतना हंसी, ऐसे रंगिए किसी को, भले ही इंद्रधनुष बना दीजिए, भले ही उसको जो रंग नापसंद हो वो लगा दीजिए, लेकिन बस इस तरह लगाइएगा कि एक बार गले मिल के सारी कड़वाहट मिटा सके। इसीलिए तो आती है ये होली, हम सबके मिलने के लिए। और यूं भी हमारे यहाँ का बहुत बड़ा त्योहार है ये अलग बात है कि हर प्रदेश में इसका इतना महत्व नहीं है। तो जिन प्रदेशों में महत्व है वहां से होली की खुशबू बाहर तक जाए, क्या आपको नहीं लगता ऐसा होना चाहिए? और सबसे बड़ी चीज यह है कि जो बाहर विदेशों में बैठे हैं वो कहीं रील्स देखते हैं, कहीं वीडियोस देखते हैं, हमारी बातें सुनते हैं, वहां तक तो भी एक संदेश जाना चाहिए कि आखिर वो क्या मिस कर रहे हैं। मुझे सबसे ज्यादा तो यही अच्छा लगता है, जो बाहर से हम लोगों को देखते हैं उनको ये लगे कि अगर वो भारत से बाहर है तो भारत का क्या क्या मिस कर रहे हैं। इसलिए भी आपको इन सब चीजों का महत्व आगे बढ़ाना है। त्योहार है तो त्योहार को खुशियों से मनाना है, मीठे से स्वागत कीजिए। एक जो बसंती उमंग होता है ना, उस उमंग को आगे बढ़ाइए, उस उमंग को फीका ना पड़ने दीजिए। जीवन में उल्लास हो, उत्साह हो, भाईचारा हो, प्रेम हो और मिठास हो। मिठास के बिना तो जीवन ही बेकार है। होली तो वैसे भी माना जाता है बुराई पर अच्छाई, असत्य पर सत्य और निराशा पर आशा की विजय का प्रतीक होती है। होली में बहुत सी पौराणिक कथाएं भी प्रचलित हैं, परंपराएं भी होली से जुड़ी हुई। आज मैं रास्ता देख रही थी कि आप लोगों में से कुछ लोग बोलोगे, साथ में जुड़े रहोगे। हाँ, आप लोगों के मैसेजेस बाद में पहुंचते हैं मुझे। किसी ने मुझे मैसेज किया था और पूछा था मैं होली कैसे मनाती हूँ। मैं होली कैसे मनाती हूँ, इस बात का कोई भी सटीक उत्तर नहीं है। क्यों? क्योंकि मैं होली जिसके साथ होती हूँ उसके जैसे मनाती हूँ। अगर मैं अपने घर पर हूँ तो जिस तरह से मेरे घर में सभी लोगों को पसंद है उस तरह से मनाती हूँ। अगर दोस्तों के साथ हूँ तो जिस तरह से दोस्तों को पसंद है उस तरह से मनाती हूँ। तो होली मनाने का कोई एक डेफिनेट क्राइटेरिया नहीं है। ये नहीं कहती हूँ कि नहीं मैं ये नहीं करती हूँ तो ये नहीं करूँ, ऐसा नहीं है। होली मनाने के लिए अगर आपके साथ मनाऊंगी तो जिस तरह से आप मनाना पसंद करते हैं मैं उस तरह से होली मनाऊंगी। और बहुत अच्छा लगेगा अगर आप लोगों के साथ मैं होली मनाती हूँ। तो हमारे यहाँ होली के एक दिन पहले होलिका दहन होता है। वैसे तो बसंत पंचमी से ही ये सब शुरू हो जाता है। और अगर आप होली का त्योहार विशेष रूप से मनाना चाहते हैं, यादगार होली, और आप लोगों में से बहुत से लोगों ने मनाई भी होगी, मथुरा की होली, ब्रज की होली, बरसाने की होली, बहुत से लोगों ने मनाई होगी। तो ये त्योहार कितने दिन चलते हैं, कैसे चलते हैं और कितना उत्साह होता है, भला मथुरा से ज्यादा कहाँ ऐसे पता चलेगा कि होली का उत्साह क्या होता है। और इसके अलावा अगर आप काशी में कभी आपने होली मनाई है तो वहाँ की होली भी अद्भुत होती है, अपूर्व होती है। वहाँ भी आप होली मना सकते हैं। लेकिन अगर आप कहीं होली नहीं मनाते तो सबसे अच्छी होली तो अपने परिवार के साथ होती है। आप परिवार में एक साथ रहिए, अपनों के साथ होली मिलाइए। रंग चाहे नीला खेलिए या लाल खेलिए, लेकिन अपनापन रहे, सादगी रहे। हैं रंगों की, तो रंगों में कभी आपने रंगीन पजल का नाम सुना है? आप कितने भी स्ट्रेस में हो, थकान में हो, परेशानी में हो, आपका किसी भी काम में मन नहीं लग रहा, आप एक बार रंगीन पजल खेल कर देखिए, आपको बहुत अच्छा लगेगा। ये जो खिलौने होते हैं ना, ये केवल बच्चों के लिए ही नहीं होते, हर उम्र के लोग इन खिलौनों के साथ खेल सकते हैं। और मुझे लगता है आजकल बड़ों की सबसे बड़ी चाहत यही होती है, कुछ देर के लिए ही सही हमें बच्चा बनने दिया जाए, हम बच्चा बन सके, फिर से बच्चे बन जाए। हर उम्र में आप खिलौने खेलकर बच्चे बन सकते हैं, अपनी खुशी को दोगुना कर सकते हैं। और खुशी जो दोगुनी होती है इसके बारे में ऐसा नहीं है, ये साइंटिफिक थियरी है, साइंस भी इसे प्रूव कर चुका है कि हाँ, ये आपकी खुशी को बढ़ाता है। और जो विशेषज्ञ होते हैं ना इस फील्ड के, इन्होंने बोला है कि जो किडलिंग है, किडलिंग यानी कि बड़ों का खिलौनों के साथ खेलना, किडलिंग बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाती है आपकी सेहत में, आपकी मेंटल हेल्थ के लिए। उसमें क्या होता है, रंगीन पजल बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है, आप सर्च करिएगा और आप ये गेम खेल भी सकते हैं। रंगीन पजल है, सॉफ्ट टॉय के साथ खेल सकते हैं। तो होली की बात है तो मैं स्ट्रेस रिलीवर के लिए रंगीन पजल आपको सजेस्ट करती हूँ। आज और ज़्यादा पढ़ने लिखने की, मनोविज्ञान की इस तरह की बातें नहीं करती हूँ। हाँ, मनोविज्ञान से जुड़े हुए आगे मैं सेशन लेकर आऊँगी, तो आप ये कोशिश करिएगा कि अगर आप आगे ज्वाइन कर सकें तो मैं बताऊँगी। आज तो बस होली के लिए जुड़ी हुई हूँ, होली की ही बात करूँ। होली तो हर साल होती है, लेकिन क्या है कि होली हर बार हमारा यही इरादा होता है कि इस बार की होली हम खास बना लें, कैसे करें, क्या करें। और होली खेलने का एक सबसे बढ़िया तरीका है कि आप भैया सफ़ेद कपड़े पहनकर होली खेलो, सफ़ेद कपड़े। और अगर